Hey guys, welcome to the Babbling Pastor Podcast, the best podcast on the entire internet. I'm Michael, and this is
Rob, getting
Rob
more coffee.
getting more coffee. You know what this podcast is getting additionally to more coffee, Rob? We're becoming more
What?
Catholic.
Whoa. Okay. Oh,
No, I wanted the response of your face without you knowing that was coming, because I didn't know what it was
oh
gonna
boy.
be, but I thought you might like
We're gonna have to
spill your
clarify
coffee.
that. We have to clarify that throughout the rest of the episode, or I'm gonna get straight fired.
We're not. I don't know if I have to clarify that any further. It's not
Yeah,
that we're not clarifying that; it's that we're not becoming more Catholic. Let me clarify my
yeah. Nobody
clarification.
pays attention to. Nobody takes us seriously anyway. It's fine.
That's 100% accurate. And to be clear, as it should be, there shouldn't you really shouldn't be getting any deep theological advice from us. I mean, we're currently both recording in a basement, so
But not our moms.
that's true. It's not our mom's basements.
Okay,
That's
so it
accurate.
could be worse. Yeah.
Could be worse. My mom lives in a mobile home, so if it was her basement, it'd be
You'd be like in
underneath.
some sort of crawl space.
I had 100% being a crawl space. You wouldn't even be
Yeah,
able to
yeah.
tell. I mean, it would be like incredibly like cobwebby and black. It'd be like you couldn't see it. It's terrible, by the way. I hate going in crawl spaces. I had to do that a couple times in my life. Once to receive a dead, to retrieve, not receive, retrieve a dead cat. That was not enjoyable either, for the cat
That's
or
how.
me.
That's how
But
all cats belong.
ooh, that is neither an
Anyway,
endorsement or of the podcast or I. I don't know.
look, if you can say we're getting more Catholic, right?
I could say all cats should die. So yeah, okay. Okay, guys, into the episode now. All right. So, hey, Rob, the Catholic Church recently said something that you thought was interesting, correct? Let's go over to that. Let's go. Oh, I'm sorry. Before I go over to that, would you like to introduce this in any way?
Um, I would like to clarify your original statement and say that it seems that actually the Pope has simply acknowledged something
Okay,
that Protestants have been saying for a long stinking time.
got it.
Um, even though, frankly, what's really funny is now there are several Roman Catholics protesting the Catholic Church.
Really? Over to
I
this?
find it hilarious.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so let's go to this statement. So, the Vatican declares that the title co-redemptrix and matriarch should no longer be used for Mary, reaffirming Christ alone is Redeemer and clarifying the Marian doctrine. And then Sola Chad at the top says, much to the disappointment of many Catholics, their Pope actually agrees with the Bible. It's stated that Mary has zero role in salvation. Nice. So you said some Catholics, not all Catholics. Some Catholics are disappointed in this particular statement.
Well, if you were to just jump on X and search for like Pope and Mary and the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
and just see what everyone is saying about this, I mean, it's like Catholic after Catholic after Catholic
Okay. Not happy.
is all like quoting previous popes that
That said
that
Mary yes.
affirmed this kind of thing. And I think it's important to state off the cuff that Sola Chad. I mean, I don't know who this is. It's just somebody that shows
Yeah,
up in
that
my
said
feed. Um,
yeah.
but he's actually not completely correct because when you read the actual statement, I mean,
Mm.
Mary still has a role and um, in some things, and really all the Pope is saying is that these like essentially these words we should probably not use these words um but
These words are
so
problematic. We still believe what we've talked about
yeah,
before. So
it's still a theological mess, but
so essentially, this is sort of like a restaurant, a manager coming to the staff of the restaurant and be like, look, the policy's still the same. We're just not going to post the signs because the customers were sort of mad. And you can still talk about it like amongst yourselves. Just don't tell anybody else. Kinda? Is that kinda?
Yeah.
Just don't use the
So
words.
yeah. So he even says in the writing, he says, given the necessity, this is maybe you could call it a conclusion of the redemptrix part of it, where he says, given the necessity of explaining Mary's subordinate role to Christ in the work of redemption, it is always inappropriate to use the title co-redemptrix to define Mary's cooperation. So they're still talking about like she still has a role in
She's still
redemption.
helping. We just don't call her that.
Right. And I think, I mean, obviously the Protestant view of that would be if you're talking about her simply her willingness to be of use to the Lord to
Yeah.
carry the Son of God, and like the Christmas story, right? Like if you're
Yeah.
talking about that, and her willingness to be a godly woman, to um, as Christ went about his work, then like that's as far as it goes, right? Like Mary, I don't want to be the Protestant, which happens from time to time, who denigrates, right? Her as a person or whatever. Like she's actually an extremely good example of just being a godly woman, but clearly the New Testament has very little to say about Mary because Mary's not the stinking point, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and she is one person in a long line of persons who simply have capitulated to the Lord's will, right? Who've simply said yes to God when He's given them a task, right? Or a role or whatever you want to call it. So, I mean, obviously, that's really like the that's the protest, right? Um, and so Mary has zero role, and I think the reason that I wanted to talk about this, and I could have picked one of 50
Hmm.
thousand posts to send to you. Um, and so there's not anything necessarily that stands out about the post in particular. I wanted to talk about the subject generally because I think that Protest like it's a good thing. It's a good thing that the Pope has said what he said. I don't want to say that it's not, but I think that there are too many Protestants celebrating in a way that like what we can't forget is that like
Hmm. It's still not
this
good doctrine. Yeah.
church has gone so far from the scriptures that like even if he says flat out Mary has no role in redemption, there's still a list of a million things that need to be addressed, like that are just blatantly
Yeah.
idolatrous or whatever. Um, so the idea that she's um, he says it is inappropriate to use the title co-redemptrix, and it's similar language when we think about the um, mediatrix, right? We have to invent cool words, don't we,
I don't
all
know
the
why we got to
time?
put an X on the end of everything. The Babylon podcast X. Yeah, we're just gonna start putting
Yeah,
X's on
there we
everything.
go.
I don't even know what the X
The
stands for. So
the babbling pastrix. No,
no,
I don't
no,
know.
because that's
I don't
usually
know.
why is it always? It always seems like it's associated with women. Because isn't that what
Yeah,
like
that's true.
Protesti always puts Patris?
Yeah,
Anyway, you know
yeah,
what I'm
yeah.
saying? Yeah,
That's true. So we don't want to advocate for that because that's
no one
like
don't.
women pastors and transgenderism. So
It's a lot of
um,
problems.
yeah, yeah.
Got it.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I think we have a lot of in Mary's case, this mediation takes place in a maternal way, just as she did at Cana, and as was like her relationship to Christians, right? From what they like, it's this long thing, and it's worth a read,
Hmm.
or it's worth having Speechify read it for you if you're that person, right, or whatever. Um,
That guy.
but
Uh-huh.
yeah, and so, but it's actually worth looking at because you're going to walk away as a Protestant going, "Yep, that's still screwed up."
Yeah.
There's still a lot wrong with that. Um, but anyway, I don't know if you. I'm sure you saw the news. You're online a lot more
Yeah.
than me,
I saw a meme
but
about it. But yeah, I'm going to share with everyone the meme I did see that I already shared with you. Nobody's going to
yeah,
know at all what this even means if you haven't watched The Office. But it's the Halloween episode in which Daryl has been suggesting things the entire time, and Michael, because Michael is egotistical, refuses to take Daryl's particular point, and then Daryl just goes above Michael and talks to corporate, and then Michael comes in, and it's like apparently corporate is going to go to emphasizing, and it goes into the wording. You can read it if you're watching the video right now, but it is funny. I saw it, and I'm like, oh, this is basically the case. And whoever made this meme, I don't see any watermark on it. Very much understood the assignment in regards to what was happening,
yeah,
based upon the point. But yeah, I think part of it. So here's the interesting thing, is that uh, not that this is why you brought it up, but I think this speaks to it a little bit, because you have statistics, and I don't know any of them off the top of my head, but you have statistics apparently demonstrating that there are a lot of people leaving the evangelical Protestant church and going into Catholicism or Orthodoxy. And most of the reason for that, as far as I can surmise from listening to the people that are talking about these statistics, or some of the younger people that are like online that are doing that, is that evangelical Protestantism doesn't have, or at least doesn't emphasize, like a historical rooted, traditional sort of thing. It's very fluff, basically, is what their argumentation is. And so they're looking for something and have found that within the Catholic Church that has some sort of liturgical, historical, the writings, like all of these things. What I think, and I don't want to put a broad brush on anybody that is leaving the Protestant church to go to Catholicism, Orthodoxy, because obviously there's a process there if you're really doing that to even get in. But I don't know I don't know if they are reading a lot of the documentation and understanding it. Like, even if, like, so when I was doing early church history stuff and to like getting together to teach some of it to my church, there's a lot of things that are good there. They're like, wow, like this is rich and this is helpful, and this helps me at least understand like the direction that the early church took on some things. And then there's some other things there that are like real crazy, and that you go, oh, this is this is why I'm a Protestant. And so I think part of it is like, yeah, there maybe is some like rich history there. There's some like things that are sort of to be admired and to be like, wow, like, yeah, that has like some roots that you don't seem to find in Protestantism. But at the same time, there's like that clarification that he had to make, and you go, why does that even? Why does the clarification even need to be made? Like, that's weird. That's a little weird that you even have to make the clarification, but then not really even clarify it as much as just say we're not using those words. I don't like the words, and so
hmm
I think part of it is, and this goes back to our last episode. If we're really honest, this goes back to all of life, really. Like, you are only going to be educated on something as much as you put time and effort into being educated on it. Everybody's looking for something, as far as like a belief system or how to interact with the world and what that looks like. And there's so many books you would never be able to read all of them. You're never going to be able to be educated on everything, which is why
no, sure.
why there's experts on these things. But I think something that I learned way too late in life was how to just stop and just ask a couple questions instead of just getting on board. with it because it sounded good. Because in college, I got on board with like the Young Restless Reform stuff, asked no questions. It just looked better than what I had been handed. And so, yeah, let's go for it. And that was a disaster. And so, I think, I think same sort of thing should be applied here. I mean, some of it just comes with time and wisdom, but I think the same sort of thing should be applied here. Where you can sit down and be like, all right, first of all, why do you even have to make that clarification? Like you said, actually reading through the article and the document and being like, all right, so what does he actually mean? And then seeing if that lines up biblically. Because there's a lot of, here's the thing. One of the reasons I think that there are a lot of people, younger people, going over to Catholicism, just to kind of narrow it down, is because you have some Catholic apologists that are probably really, really good at what they do and can sort of reason out or explain or. And to do that, though, you are going to have to be forced to go outside of Scripture to Catholic writings in order to actually ground this Mary idea in any
Oh,
sort of
sure.
reason,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, any reasonable foundation whatsoever. And I think at that point, that's where I would just encourage people to be like we've talked. I don't know if you said it this episode or last episode, but just be discerning in saying like, all right, does that track though? And is that something I'm willing to sign on to theologically in this system of thought? And doing the same thing I talked about when we were talking about like capitalism versus socialism. Like I can acknowledge that Protestantism has some issues. Like there's some things that are not great. I still choose it over Catholicism because of the bigger issues I see within Catholicism. And
Hmm.
so one of the I think it's just important to to do that. When we see a title like an article like that, one of the big questions I ask immediately is like why are we why if that's a confusion, it's a bit for the Pope to have to make a statement on it. It's at least it's a big
Yeah.
enough topic that he sees an issue with that apparently has spread enough to where there's a lot of Catholics mad about it. To where he has to make a statement, I go like, wow, like there seems to be some theological problems there, and so that's where I would. I don't know if that's a whole lot of nothing I just said there, but I think anybody considering maybe Catholicism, that would be a flag to be like, yeah, I can acknowledge because people tell me all the time when I post about early church stuff, they're like, you're like 2 steps away from becoming a Catholic, and I'd be like, I can assure you, I'm not. Um, but
You
but
know, uh, yeah. So I mean, I have my own, like, I think one of, uh, so my opinion, one of them anyway, about why you see young people, heading to, and it has to do with somewhat with what you were getting at, I think, but heading to like Eastern Orthodoxy or Roman Catholicism or whatever, would be that we live in a society, generally speaking, with nothing you can hold on to anymore.
that's
That
true.
like the average young, and this is goes along with some of the other stuff we've been talking about in podcasts recently. Um, that like we have loads of young people that have no foundation, in a world that like increasingly you feel a need for foundation, right? I think when Charlie Kirk was shot, right? I mean that caused a whole host of people. It was a 9/11 sort of thing, right? It caused a whole host of people to now all of a sudden be thinking, I should there's got to be more. There's got to be more than this, right? Like um
Pop out the guitar.
yeah. But but in all
Yeah,
seriousness, it caused a whole host of people, particularly I think young people who have never been given anything to hold on to tangibly, and have sort of thrived in the chaos, uh, to start going, man, it would be nice to have something to stand on, you know, and I think that they see the length of this thing, and it's been going on for a long time, you know, um, and they'll kind of flock to that because of the liturgy of the whole thing. Like the let's say time tested. Even though there's so many theological problems with it, I don't know that I would call it a church for real. Um, but they I think that they see it as something very plainly to be held on to, right?
Yeah.
And to your point, that's not something that you see across Protestantism. In fact, many church, I think, so our church now subscribes to the 1689 Baptist Confession, so that gives us a few hundred years, right, of uh, of history. But we also regularly kind of talk about the reformers. One of the women's Bible studies that, which, I mean, this is kind of a fluke, doesn't happen in a lot of churches, but one of our women's Bible studies last year, and it took most of the year, is they went through a Ligonier church history thing together, where I mean, they talked from apostolic, early church fathers, all the way to Reformation and today and whatever. And I think that there's an intentional attempt to ground um, our people with the history of the Christian faith. It's not just New Testament and then us, right? And
Yeah.
and like, of course there's no grounding there. You end up with that fool marching around stage doing Baby Shark, for his sermon or whatever. Like,
We had 2,000 years of amnesia, and now here we are.
yeah, yeah. Now here we are. Let's further mess up the fact that we need to be entertained so much, right? Um, and like, you don't see, particularly as we think about Mary, like there's nothing in apostolic writings like first to third centuries where you really have any kind of what we would refer to as Mary worship kind of things, right? There's no praying to Mary, no veneration of Mary, or statues being made, or liturgical kind of devotion to her. There's no invoking her as some sort of intercessor. And the New Testament itself is pretty restrained about Mary at all after the birth of Christ, um, and maybe in Acts chapter 1. Um, there's certainly a respect for her. Like I said, I mean, she's an example to women. I think that's important. And there's some mid second century stuff where they kind of start embellishing her life a little bit and claiming a perpetual virginity, which ought to have just been burned at the stake right away, because Jesus' brothers are talked about in the scriptures, right? Like, it's not rocket science to go, okay, well, that's
Well,
not right. Moving on.
you know
Right?
why though? There's not a lot of literature is because the church was really anti-feminism, and so all they burned all those letters in a way to perpetuate patriarchy and to diminish the divine feminine altogether. But
You know what? Good for the
that's not what happened, but that is the claim. So okay, cool. Yeah, no, and I think
yeah.
I think what you're saying there is 100% is regards to grabbing on to something that feels rooted. And
Yeah.
your example with the Kirk thing, I think, is true too. One of the things that I've had this discussion with a lot of people. I just guess I didn't realize how prolific the dude was. I just didn't. He wasn't on my feed a lot, and apparently I was not within the demographic. But one of the interesting things was that did seem to be all of the videos I saw, or the kids that I know locally that like really liked him. It did seem to be grounded on at least at least there's a foundation. There's not, it's not just perpetually gray. There is
Yep.
a black and a white, a right and a wrong. There's structure. And so I think out of everything, even if there were people that maybe didn't agree with him, they, from what I can tell, they at least acknowledge the structure part. Like there is a thing, and that seems to be the draw. Not only within we're not talking about Kirk, but just in general, the draw for something that is sturdy, that is tangible in a world where we talked about the last episode. There's no identity, and when you don't have a cohesive identity, you desire that, and so you're going to latch on to that in some way. I would argue that is also, even though thank God it is on the decline, that I think is why there was such an increase of identification within the LGBTQ plus arena, is because at least there was an identity that somebody could grab onto, even if it was even if it was fractured. At least there was an umbrella title that allowed people to have some kind of identity, even if it was kind of all over the place. So yeah, I think the core of it comes down to that's why people are leaving. Now back to the Mary thing, just so we on that. So one of the interesting things I find there is that it comes back to the fact that the Pope is supposed to be, if I understand, and again, Catholics that maybe watch this can correct me, whatever he says is supposed to go, right? Like that's the idea. Like if he says this is not how we identify her, that's how it's supposed to work. I mean, I don't, you know more about Catholicism than I do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, Roman Catholics are a lot more like Protestants than they would like to admit.
Okay.
In the sense that someone across town is going to tell you something different than someone at this church, right?
So
I mean,
so yeah.
it's completely different. Mother
Sounds very
Teresa,
Protestant.
with all of the lauding and celebrating of Mother Teresa, had on in her little hospital situation had portraits and wall hangings of Hindu gods, like because that's the culture they were in the middle of, right? And it's like, yeah, I'm not sure Mother Teresa's even in heaven if that's the kind of gospel that she believed, right? Like maybe we should talk about that, right? So,
That's
um,
interesting.
yeah, well, um, uh, so all that to say, like
Yeah.
there
It's
isn't
a
like
variety. Yeah. A
yeah,
cohesive
you're gonna get
argument.
it's just like Protestantism in that way. Like you're gonna get different opinions, but and it's also just like Protestant in the sense that yes, there's like a particular dogma that you would say, like these are the absolute things, the agreed upon
Mm-hmm.
thing, right? Um, and frankly, this Mary as mediatrix thing isn't one of them.
Yeah.
It's actually
What
not. It's not in the
Which
Catholic
seems
dogma.
weird in regards to if she's part of salvation, you would think that would be a key
Right,
thing.
right. Yeah, I mean there are some things about Mary that are right. The Council of Ephesus was like a really big turning point with the Mary thing specifically, and that was like for something AD, where she's declared officially as like the Mother of God kind of status, um, and the the intention of that though was simply the affirmation of Christ's deity. That's why they worded it that way. It
Yeah.
actually had nothing to do with like Mariology,
It
right?
goes back to what we talked about earlier. What you say and what people hear. Those are two
Yeah,
different
right,
things.
right. Because it pretty quickly began to morph into. I mean, what we see today is a far stretch from that, but it's the logical outcome of some of how that was taken, right? And so there's um, so yeah, specifically regarding like the Pope and infallibility, and anybody who's like a Roman Catholic uh, apologist or something like that that watches this is going to probably talk about how wrong I am about something. But my understanding is, in so much as like when the Pope is intentionally speaking about dogma or creating dogma or whatever, that is infallible, but not like all the things that the Pope might say are infallible. Um,
That just
which,
seems that gets messy real quick. It
yeah,
seems
it does,
like.
right? And I think that we see that because Pope Francis was a complete lunatic, right? When it comes to
Well, yeah. What if you
it,
have two popes that say opposite things, but they're both popes that are saying the thing in the infallible mode? Yeah.
that's a good question. And how do you even determine what ought to be taken as infallible and what shouldn't be? I mean, if this
I would think
guy
at that
is
point
the
I would preface
author of
it as the
Christ,
Pope. I'd be
right?
like, "This is the infallible mode thing."
Yeah, yeah,
End
yeah.
sentence.
Put my infallible hat on. Like, I don't know. I think that the idea of a pope is laughable in the first place, and that's
Yeah.
part of Protestantism, I suppose. But um,
Okay. Well,
so there are lots and lots of things wrong with the whole thing. But
yeah. Clearly.
I guess my thing is, maybe one of the takeaways is if your church isn't currently grounded in church history, it's actually a helpful thing for your
Yes.
church to do. When we talked about uh, um, we went through a Sunday school thing where we were talking about why we do what we do on Sunday mornings. Some of the just Baptists don't like this word, but liturgy, right? I mean, that's what it is, right?
What did
Um,
he say? Liturgy.
we're leaving. Yeah. Um, but every church has liturgy. It's just not necessarily quite as formal in our case. Um, one of the things that I did was went back to Justin Martyr when he was describing what they do, um, what a typical Lord's Day was, and like, oh, look, all the way back there is some of the exact same and most of the exact same things that we do. Oh, and also in the Old Testament, like, a couple thousand years before this almost, right? Like,
Yeah.
here you have him actually getting up on a stage of sorts and with a podium and open the book and expound it
The
to the people and
the two things, the
weird
two
how
takeaways,
all the way back, right?
the two takeaways they were astounded by that was one that it was longer. I was like, you guys technically get off pretty easy with just 2 hours, and two, the non-believers were not the non-baptized believers were not allowed to participate in communion.
Yeah.
That was
But like not
mind-boggling.
only not allowed to participate, but just to
You had to
clarify
leave.
that statement, you had to leave.
Get
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. Like I preface the Lord's Supper a lot because we do that every week. And so like I preface that often, like reiterate that like this is for believers, in the scriptures, but like you had to leave before they
I
began
I
going
could
through
see
the
like
Lord's Supper.
I could see like local your newspaper like local pastor makes all non-baptized believers leave
Oh my
service.
goodness.
What are
Yeah.
they doing? Which is also why there
Yeah.
was such
Yeah.
speculation about cannibalism. But whatever. I mean, you win some, you lose some. So no, my last thought here
Okay.
is on that point. I think that one of the best things you could do, and this was the most interesting thing for me when I taught. I mean, and I'll be honest, it was a very 3,000 foot overview of church history to them. But what was interesting was the just sort of how they could see how, like what you're talking about as far as the service goes, or the beliefs, or how those things came about. These are people that have been in church their whole lives that had never heard it, most of this, almost all of it. And so what was helpful to them, I think, was to see and to have to wrestle through, to be honest with you, like why we're Protestant and not Catholic, and how like all of that, like the again, we've talked about this in the last two episodes, having to actually use your brain to think about why you believe what you believe, and then have a little bit of that. I mean, there were a couple people that came back within a couple months of that class were like, hey, I had this discussion with, and they were interested on where to go further down that rabbit hole, because what they had helped them in a conversation with somebody, but they only got so far because we only talked about it up to a point. And
Yep.
so I think like providing that for them and giving them resources shows that, like, yeah, I mean, this isn't just, we didn't just like show up one day and be like, we should do this. Like, that's not what we did. And I think the more you get into it, the more you, one, have to wrestle with the messiness of humanity and how it's not gone great all the time, as well as just the rich history of what we have. Like my friend at Church Joe, he's reading through the Bruce Shelley's book on church history. And like every Sunday, we don't have a lot of, I get there like almost right on time every week. And then he's got to go off and do youth group pretty shortly after this. We don't get a lot of time to talk, but the short window that we do on the book, you can just tell how much, like, how invested he is in kind of reading through that and learning that. Like, he's excited. And that's the part that I love. I mean, I'm sure you do too. Whenever you're teaching somebody something and it's like it clicks and they're like, they're hungry for more of it. And you're like, that is what I want. Like, that is it right there. And so I think if you can just give that to people and they can see that, like, there's a depth and just a hit, like it's better than whatever stupid show you're watching on TV. I guarantee it. And so, like, if you just, like, you think it's boring, but it's not. And so if you can get into it and understand, like, how this isn't, again, some stupid show you're watching may be entertaining. The stuff you're going to learn about church history directly affects your life in regards to what you believe, how your Christianity interacts with history. It makes you wrestle through the realities of almost, by the way, in case you guys don't know, I'm sorry, this is my in thought that's going on for a long time. In case you don't know, the things we're dealing with right now in the world as believers are not new. Like, they've been done before. And you have people that have written about them and experienced them and given wisdom to them. And some of them have given terrible examples of how to do it. And so when you read that, you can get that and then process that and then go out into a world better equipped than they were, because they were the first ones dealing with it. And now you can be better equipped. That's my last thing. I think it's super helpful. Read it, apply it.
I think also, two quick things. It ought to be stated that um, one of the common things that you hear from the Roman Catholic perspective is, hey, why would you leave the church that has always been, right? And that's just not the case, right? Roman Catholicism, as it kind of is thought about today, was not like first believers, right? The church specifically was just a thing, God's people, uh, and it, gradually the predominant thing morphed into, over time, Roman Catholicism, and essentially the protesting that began. I mean, not just beginning with Luther, but like Wycliffe and others before him, um, and John or Jan Hus, um, those before him that protested and spoke out or whatever. Um, I mean, they were simply trying to get back to the scriptures, the way that the church was before Rome started to pollute the thing. Um, and so, and then, secondly, the the um, learning church history, like you're talking about, I think, and generally speaking, learning something new, especially when you discovered it, um, is exhilarating. Like, it is one of the, um, yeah, of course, the Lord and knowing Him more is what draws us into the scriptures. But there's a discovery that happens there, right? Like, that's one of the things that is attractive about jumping deeper and not just doing a Bible reading plan, even though I think that's important, but jumping into, I discovered something just the other day that I thought, these guys, right? Who, so very quickly, your Bible translation is simply a translation, right? And that means that it's translated through men who are wearing lenses. I use the Legacy Standard Bible most of the time for like study and even preaching. And it kind of came out of the Master's Seminary, John MacArthur world, and uh, very eschatology is very premillennial, dispensational kind of thinking. And so in Matthew 24, they translate, and this gospel of the kingdom will go throughout the whole world, right? Um, and and that same word for world, first of all, is not cosmos, right? Or cosmos, right? Is where we get that. It's not, it's all the inhabited earth. And there's a footnote that says that, right? All the inhabited earth. And then what's really funny to me is when you go to Luke, when it says, uh, essentially Caesar Augustus, however it's worded,
Yeah, send a
did a
decree throughout the whole world. Yeah.
yeah, throughout the whole. The LSB actually translate it throughout all the inhabited earth, right? The same word. And then the footnote to that says the Roman Empire. And I just thought that was pretty funny because that's what I think Matthew 24 is talking about. But like just a bit. So, but
Yeah.
that, even that little discovery to me was like, never saw this, never would have thought that. And it just looking a little bit more in depth, and it's like these guys. Um, but um, so yeah, I think just, man, jump into it. Like turn the TV off and jump into it,
Hmm.
and make sure that you're actually like pick a subject, that you want to learn or know more about in the scriptures, and read the thing from cover to cover, studying that subject. The amount of, let's even say, entertainment and exhilaration and discovery kind of that you're gonna get through embarking into it that way, will replace a lot of
Yeah.
stuff that you just veg out on now.
Well, it's like the
So
difference between eating actual protein and a bucket of sugar. I mean, you're going to get a high, but it's like how is that going to sustain itself? I mean, that's the thing.
yeah,
It's either going to help you or it's going to give you a whoop poof and a crash. And
yeah,
so you don't want the woof poof and a crash. You want a steady gain is what you want. Yeah, a
yeah. And
helpful muscle.
eventually you're going to get spiritual diabetes.
And you don't want spiritual diabetes. Your legs swell up and they fall off. Not good. Anyway, thank you guys for joining. I bet look, that was your trophy. If you stayed to the end, that little last bit there on diabetes was your trophy.
Yep.
So hopefully you got to experience that.
That's a shirt waiting to happen right there.
Spiritual diabetes got me. But I don't know. I'll have to think through that a little bit more. We can come up
Yeah.
with
I
something.
suppose you probably don't want to put that on socks though. That'd be pointless. But
Bye. No, bye. Bye.